Today we're joined by Tracy Barnhart, Quality Manager at AASHTO Resource, and Brian Johnson, the Manager of the AASHTO Accreditation Program. Brian will be here just in case to answer any accreditation-related questions at the end of the presentation. But for now, I'll hand it over to the very capable hands of Tracy Barnhart. Thanks for joining us today, Tracy. Take it away.
A mind-numbing, time-sucking exercise in futility. Complicated, pointless, the same as an internal audit. If you think that's what a management review is, you're in for a pleasant surprise. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining me today. Thanks for also giving me a reason to wear real clothes today. I appreciate that. The learning objectives for today's session are as follows. We're going to recognize how management reviews differ from internal audits. Also, by the end of the session, you'll discover new strategies to effectively implement these reviews to achieve your business's goals. And lastly, I'll define and share with you the three primary outputs of a successful management review. So to kick things off, we have a poll question. Kim's going to pop that up on the screen for us. How would you rate your knowledge level regarding AASHTO R18 management review requirements? So if you take just a moment and answer that question for me, and this will give me an idea of the audience that we have today, select your answer and then click submit. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. How would you rate your knowledge level regarding specifically AASHTO R18 management review requirements? How's that looking, Kim? Are we getting some answers?
We are getting some answers.
Okay.
And I'll end the polling now. I think a fair representation, and let's share the results.
Okay. Oh, wow, great. So we have a nice mixture of people, more towards the beginning and intermediate. And it looks like 2 people are actually here to stump me with tricky questions. I love it. Okay, I'll be ready. Thanks. Thanks, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The outline of today's session, I'll start by defining what management reviews are. We'll go into AASHTO R18 requirements. I'll compare management reviews to internal audits. I'll talk briefly about quality policies and objectives. We'll spend some time on the planning phase for management reviews, the inputs that are required to be covered during management reviews, as well as the outputs that should result from them, and the benefits of performing these reviews. And I wanted to say that this is a scaled down version of the live version of this presentation that I normally give at our technical exchange. So I won't be going into as much detail in this webinar version. Here's a definition of management reviews, and I highlighted keywords in green. A routine evaluation by management, that's important, to determine if your QMS is performing effectively. That word effectively is very key to management reviews, and producing desired results. And those desired results are your organization's goals related to quality. The AASHTO R18 requirements, simplified here, are that the management reviews be performed by top management. I'll explain what that is in a moment. At least once every 12 months. There are required topics that you must discuss during management reviews. And of course, you want to maintain records as evidence that you've actually performed them. In a nutshell, a management review is a status report, similar to the State of the Union address, but it's actually your state of the laboratory address. In other words, is your organization meeting its goals? Does your organization even have goals related to quality? It's a look back and a look ahead. So how are you doing over the last year? What is on your plate for next year? And what are your future goals? How can you improve? And management review can actually help you with strategic planning. It's a big picture look at how your organization is doing overall rather than just focusing on those minute details that you normally would during an internal audit. All right, we have one more poll for you before we get into comparing management reviews to internal audits. Which of these statements is true about both internal audits and management reviews? And there may be more than one correct answer. So you want to take a moment to answer that? There may be more than one correct answer. I'm looking forward to seeing the answers on this one. Let's give you another moment, and then Kim will pop up the results for us. And how's that looking there, Kim?
It is looking pretty good.
Okay. Did everybody get the right answers?
No. From what I remember of the right answers, though, I could be misremembering. I'm going to end the poll now and share the results there.
Okay. Both are important to maintaining quality. That is absolutely correct. Anyone can perform them. Not really. I'll talk about that. Both should be conducted at around the same time. Not really. That's not ideal. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. Records are required to be maintained for sure. And the results of internal audits are inputs to management reviews. Yes. So very good. Overall, excellent job. And we'll talk about those couple of things there that maybe aren't quite the right answer. So let's compare internal audits to management reviews before we get started with anything else. With an internal audit, this is an audit of implementation. The focus is on that. Are you doing what you say you're doing in your quality management system? If you're saying that you're doing technician competency evaluation every 12 months, are you actually doing those every 12 months? These can be performed by anyone within the organization. Of course, that person would have to be trained to do the audits and be familiar with the audit criteria. Audits are specific. You're really digging into the weeds with audits, dotting those I's, crossing your T's. I highlighted improvement. Any of these quality-related activities, we're always focusing on continual improvement. And then audit results are inputs to management reviews. So you're actually going to take those results and talk about them at management reviews. With management reviews, the focus is more on effectiveness rather than implementation. Effectiveness meaning, is your organization actually meeting its goals related to quality? Management review must be performed by top management. You can involve others in that, but you absolutely need to have top management involved. It's more of a big picture look at your organization rather than the specific look with the internal audit. And again, focus on improvement. All right. I want to touch on quality policy and objectives before we dig any deeper. And if your organization doesn't have a quality policy and specific goals related to quality, you might want to actually think about developing something. A quality policy, if your organization has one, defines what quality means to you. And that quality policy should be meaningful to your organization and specific to your organization rather than just copying some generic words from the internet. It should state your business's standard of service and the intentions that your organization has related to quality. At AASHTO Resource, our quality policy statement has a lot of other words besides this, but the meat of it is an acronym. We provide products and services that are professional, accurate, competent, and timely. That's what those letters stand for. But is a quality policy enough? Are those words, professional, accurate, competent, are those words specific? Not really, not on their own. Professional, that word means different things to different people. Are those words measurable? Yes, but you need to say what it is that you're measuring and what those specific goals are. Otherwise, how do you really know how you're doing? Without those specific goals, it's really more difficult to determine if your QMS is effective, which is the whole purpose of management review. Many of you may be familiar with setting SMART goals. If your organization is interested in developing goals, think about making sure that they're specific, measurable, actually attainable, relevant, and timely or time-bound. And some laboratories I've been to, they have key performance indicators, KPIs, that they use as their quality objectives, which is just fine. You want to make sure that all of your goals are actually consistent with your quality policy. And believe it or not, at AASHTO Resource, we're overachievers, and we actually currently have 22 specific goals related to quality. Don't expect laboratories to have that many, but that's how many we have. To give you an example, circling back to our professional, accurate, competent, and timely quality policy, on timeliness, we provide timely services to our customers by, and our goal for this is maintaining an average report life cycle of 20 days or less for final on-site assessment reports. So that means from the time that your assessor has a closing meeting with you to the time that your final report is actually published, no more than 20 days have passed. And we actually do measure that. We have a database that measures that for us. That's just one example of our 22 goals. We have other goals that relate to our internal equipment calibration, standardization, check, and maintenance activities, errors, staff training, the timeliness of us completing corrective action reports and complaint reports, and so on and so forth. And these are all things that you could consider incorporating at your laboratory. So let's get into the planning phase with management reviews. Of course, there is some planning involved. First of all, you need to determine who should participate in these reviews. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, top management, that is something required by AASHTO R18, that top management be involved in management reviews. And we get questions about this quite frequently. What does top management mean? This would be your senior management involved in your laboratory's activities. These are your decision makers, people that are making decisions about policies or budgets, training opportunities, things of that nature. That's who your top management is, because you're going to be talking about all of those things at management review and making decisions about those things. And without your senior management involved, your management review will not be as effective. The format of these management reviews, whether it's formal or informal, that's up to you to decide. You can go either way on that. At AASHTO Resource, ours is formal. It's a sit-down gathering of people that's scheduled in advance. We have been asked, can we do this via email? Well, ideally, you're going to prefer to have a live group discussion rather than an emailed report. With an emailed report, you're going to miss that collaboration component. You're not going to maybe get as much input from others, where if you're meeting in person with others, you're identifying improvement opportunities together and maybe coming up with some action items that you can implement. If you just email a report to your rest of your management group, will they actually read it, number one, and will they get anything out of it? And for record keeping, you want to make sure that you include the attendees and discussion topics and any associated notes. Then we get into scheduling these these management reviews. R18 requires that these be done at least once every 12 months. And I highlighted this. This is one of the questions from the second poll that we did. We do think you should consider avoiding immediately scheduling internal audits right before or after a management review. Internal audits are inputs to management review. If you're doing an internal audit on Tuesday and then you're doing a management review on Wednesday, you haven't allowed things to breathe in between. Probably during your internal audit, you've identified some non-conforming items and you'd have to issue some corrective action reports for those. Let that breathe a little bit. Let those corrective actions take their course and maybe swing back to management review in 3 or 6 months to see if those corrective actions have actually been effective. If you do them too close together, it doesn't give you an opportunity to do that. And it's nice to circulate an agenda to the people that are going to be involved in the management review a few days in advance to let them know what the discussion topics will be so they could be prepared as well. Then as far as planning, you'll have to start collecting some data. Typically, this is something I do at AASHTO Resource as the quality manager. You want to collect the previous notes from last year's management review. You could even go back a couple of years or 3 years. You may need to refer to those notes during your management review discussions. We do that all the time at ours. I remember talking about this last time. What was it that we decided on? It's nice to have those notes available. Data related to quality goals. If you have quality objectives or quality goals, definitely want to gather your data associated with those. Customer feedback results. Maybe you have a goal related to test report timeliness or proficiency sample testing or technician certification, something like that. So make sure you gather that information. Customer feedback and complaints, that is definitely something you'll be talking about at management review. Bring that along. Internal and external audit results. Internal audits performed by someone at your agency, as well as those external audits performed by AASHTO Resource, CCRL, and any other agencies that might audit you for construction materials testing. Proficiency sample results, again, AASHTO Resource, CCRL, any other PT programs that you might be involved in. Gather that information from the past year. Status of corrective action reports. That's another thing you'll be discussing at management reviews. So you want to make sure that you have all the information gathered with corrective action reports. And anything else, that's just a bare minimum list. There could be a lot more that you're going to be talking about. All right, so this launches us into inputs and outputs of a management review. And we'll start with the inputs that are required by AASHTO R18. There are 6 of them in AASHTO R18, and the focus should be on the trends, any trends that you're seeing. And I will say here that it can be a lot more than 6 of them. ISO standards like ISO 9001 and 17025, they require a lot more as far as inputs are concerned. But today we're just going to focus solely on the AASHTO R18 inputs. The first one is results of internal and external audits. So this is a general overview. Again, you're not going to go through every line of every report and every finding that you got, just a general overview. Who did the audits? When were the audits? What did they audit? The big picture, I highlighted that in green because these items highlighted in green are a continuing theme through these inputs. The big picture, did the audits go as you expected or not? Why not? Is your internal audit of value? How do you determine that? Well, if you do an internal audit and then you have an external audit by AASHTO Resource, for example, and your internal audit has no findings, but your AASHTO Resource report has quite a few findings, that may mean that you're not doing as thorough of a job with your internal audits. Really shouldn't be any surprises with your external audits. Trends, are there repeat findings between internal audits from one year to another? Same with external audits, or even between your internal audit and your external audit. Are there repeat findings on certain things? Why is that? Are you not doing an adequate job of correcting things and digging into the true root causes of those issues? Those are things to talk about. Have your goals been met? If you have specific goals related to internal audits or external audits, some laboratories have goals as to how many findings they're going to get. This is the time to talk about those goals. Focusing on continual improvement. If your goals are not met, why is that? Talk about that. Do we have gaps in training? Was there a communication breakdown on the audit criteria? What might be going on there? And then what's on the schedule for next year? Do you have internal audits scheduled for next year? Are AASHTO Resource and CCRL coming in next year? Now's the time to talk about that. And again, another green item, improvement opportunities. How can you improve the results of your future audits? And how can you actually improve your internal audits in general? Maybe you want to provide more training for your internal audits. Maybe you want to provide more training or communication of things to your staff as far as technical requirements are concerned or the QMS is concerned. All right. The second input is proficiency sample performance. Again, this is a general overview. You're not going to go line by line on every test parameter for every sample and talk about how you did. This is a general overview. What samples did you participate in? Who provided them? When did the samples come? And the big picture look. Did your performance go as expected or not? And if not, why is that? Again, focusing on improvement. You should see improved performance over the years with your proficiency sample testing. And if not, you should talk about why that might be. Trends, are you seeing repeat low ratings on specific tests or specific test parameters? Why is that? Is there a training failure? Are there gaps in training? Are you looking at those performance charts that AASHTO Resource and CCRL provide to you? And are you noting any testing bias or potential testing bias? And why? Is that related to equipment issues or training? Lots of things to talk about there. If you have goals related to proficiency sample performance, have those been met? Some laboratories actually have goals based on the number of low ratings they'll allow themselves over a period of time. So you're going to discuss that at management review. What's on the calendar for next year? Do you need to enroll in additional programs? Are you expanding the scope of your services? And that's something that you would have to do. What's coming up in the new year? And then improvement. Do you need to beef up your training programs, do a little bit of a better job on competency evaluation, maybe check your equipment more often than you're already doing? Things like that to consider during improvement opportunity discussions. All right, the third item, input, status of corrective actions. So you want to ask yourself and look at whether or not all of your corrective actions are closed at the time of the management review. And if they're not closed, why is that? You may have corrective actions that resulted from audit findings, internal and external, proficiency testing, complaints from customers. If some of those are still open, why is that? And that there might be a very good reason for that. At AASHTO Resource, we typically have 10 or 15 corrective actions open at any given time, because I'm leaving those open to check effectiveness, to make sure 2, 3, 4, 6 months from now, we're not seeing those same things repeating. So that's why we keep ours open. And we do talk about that at our management review. We talk about every one of those that is still open. Have your corrective actions actually been effective? How do you know that? Well, a great way to determine that is whether or not you have repeat findings on your different audits, internal and external. So to talk about that, the big picture look, are there more CARs, corrective action reports this year than you had in previous years? Why is it? Why are you trending in the wrong direction? Maybe you have more corrective actions in certain areas like proficiency testing or equipment failure, or maybe you're not meeting your quality goals or objectives. And sidebar on that, if you're not meeting specific goals that you have, you should issue a corrective action report for those, because that is something that you should investigate. But just talking about, do you need to do something with training or improving communication? Have your goals been met regarding corrective actions? You may have goals regarding how quickly you close those or how quickly you circle back to certain information. Are those goals being met? Are those corrective actions being taken care of in a timely fashion? And then improvement opportunities. As I mentioned before, are you digging deep enough into the root cause of your issues? If you're getting those repeat findings, probably not. And maybe you need to dig a little bit deeper, maybe even look into some training that'll help you in that area. All right, input number 4, staffing changes and training needs. As we all know, within any organization, we have ongoing promotions and resignations. We're creating new positions. We're phasing out other positions. We have vacancies to be filled. People are retiring. We're expecting long-term absences due to illness or pregnancy. So now's the time, and again, you're going to have your top managers in the room. Are your personnel resources adequate? Are you fully staffed at this time? Do you have big projects coming up that may require you to hire additional personnel? Have you filled those key vacancies that need to be filled? Is your training, as far as the training needs component of this, is your training effective? Look at those audit reports. How do you confirm competency of technicians? If you have to train new staff coming up, who's going to do that? Are they qualified to do that? How are they going to do that? Is there a plan, or are you just going to fly by the seats of your pants? Is there a calendar? Are you planning to add new tests to your scope? And if you've never done those before, do you have somebody that's familiar, that's a technical expert on those? Do you have the equipment to do those tests? How are you going to achieve competency? There's so much to talk about on here. The big picture, overarching look, are people burned out? Are they working a lot of overtime? Are you having people stick around, or is it a constant revolving door? And what can you do about that if people don't stick around? Is your training program strong or weak? And what can you do to improve it? Trends, again, I've mentioned it many times, repeat findings on audits for things related to training, like technical competency, or maybe the training records themselves are incomplete or missing, or they're not done on time, the competency evaluations. A lot of things that you can talk about there as far as trends are concerned. And then if you have goals related to training, are those goals being met? Some laboratories I've been to have professional development goals for their technicians where they're required to get certifications. Are those happening? What are the timelines for completing training when you hire new people? Are you meeting those goals? And then improvement opportunities. Maybe professional development is an improvement opportunity and you can send people for external training or certification. Or maybe you even want to think about hiring a training manager to handle all of these duties. All right, input number 5 would be quality management system updates. The first thing to ask yourselves, and this is something that we struggle with at AASHTO Resource, are all of your key policies documented adequately? And if so, can someone unfamiliar with that policy or procedure follow it without any training or experience with it? If you have only one person that knows how to do specific important tasks, are those tasks documented adequately in your QMS? Or when that person leaves or retires or whatever, are they taking all that knowledge with them and then you're going to have to reinvent the wheel? Are you doing regular reviews of your quality management system documents? As you know, these things change all the time, certainly do at AASHTO Resource. Maybe you should be reviewing those documents every year or every couple of years. Upcoming changes, I've mentioned before, big projects coming up, maybe something totally new to you. Are you hiring more personnel because of that? Will you be purchasing more equipment? Have you circled back to the QMS and updated things accordingly, like your inventory list, training procedures, equipment calibration, standardization, check, and maintenance procedures, anything like that? When you make a big change, you want to make sure that the associated information in the QMS is updated. If you have a quality policy, now's the time to actually review it and make changes to it. Keep it fresh. If it's not working for you, if it doesn't make sense, or if you need to beef it up, now's the time to talk about that. And a big picture look. With those audits that you've had internally and externally, are you seeing a lot of quality management system related findings from them? What areas are you strong in with your QMS? What areas are weak? Do you feel that the QMS is understood by and communicated to all of your staff? How do you know that? Have you ever communicated it to your staff? Trends to look for, again, repeat findings related to QMS topics, competency evaluations not being done on time or not being done at all, equipment records not being done or missing information, how the timeliness of your internal audits and management reviews. Are you actually doing those every 12 months? Have you reviewed or revised documentation in your quality management system at all? If you have goals related to the QMS, Are those being met? And again, maybe you have a goal that the QMS documents will be updated every year or every 2 years, something like that. If you don't have goals, maybe you want to think about creating some goals. And lastly, the improvement opportunities. One I can think of here is many of you may be still using a paper system for your quality manual, policies and procedures. Maybe it's time to think about going electronic on that. That might help you with document control. Perhaps you want to look into purchasing software to help you manage all of your QMS documentation and activities. That's actually something that we're doing at AASHTO Resource right now. Do you have a designated quality manager? Maybe you want to think about hiring somebody to do that. Do you train people on the quality management system when you hire them as part of the onboarding system? That's another improvement opportunity, and that'll help you with the understanding and communication of the QMS to your staff. All right, we have one more input, complaints. And not just complaints, but customer feedback in general. We don't want to focus just on negative things at our management review. We want to focus on everything, the big picture. So with the general overview, based on the feedback you're getting from customers, are your customers satisfied? Have all of the complaints that you've received been addressed adequately? Did you circle back to those customers to let them know that you care about their concern and that you've taken care of it? Have you made improvements? The big picture look. Are you getting more complaints this year than last year? Why are you trending in the wrong direction? What are the strong and weak aspects of the services that you provide to customers? With trends, what are people complaining about? Are they complaining about the timeliness of the services you're providing or all of the mistakes you're making on the records, professionalism of staff, people showing up late in the field? What are they complaining about, and what can you do about it? If you have goals related to customer feedback, have those goals been met? You may have goals related to the timeliness of completing complaint reports or just customer satisfaction goals in general. And then lastly, those improvement opportunities. Can you improve training? Can you improve communication? If you don't even have a customer feedback form or a complaint system, maybe you want to develop one. Or if you do have one and nobody's using it, maybe you need to revise that, go electronic, whatever it might be. So those are our 6 inputs. The output list is much shorter, and these are not in AASHTO R18. This is just for your general knowledge, but there are 3 main outputs resulting from management reviews if you're doing them effectively. And these would be decisions and actions related to the following 3 things. The first one, effectiveness of the quality management system. That's why we're doing management reviews. Is your QMS effective? Is your organization successful? Have those goals been met? Are they appropriate goals? Do your goals align with the quality policy? The second output would be decisions and actions related to resource needs. This is why you have top management in your management reviews. Do you have everything you need to meet your goals? We're talking about personnel, equipment, training, hardware and software, money to do things. Do you have all of those resources, or is that a hindrance to you being a successful organization? And lastly, decisions and actions related to improvement opportunities. Again, all of these quality-related activities should result in improvement items. So you may have identified some things. Now you need to determine who's going to implement them, how they're going to implement them, when they're going to implement them. Do they have the resources to do that? So those are your 3 outputs. All right. Let's talk just briefly about record keeping. Many of you know that AASHTO R18 has a template on which you can record results of management reviews. And then I'll also show you an example of the notes that we keep at AASHTO Resource. But let's look at that R18 template. It's an example management review record. And here it prompts you to make sure you're taking attendance during the management review. And then it prompts you to just include a little summary about each of those topics that you're supposed to be talking about at management review. Again, a general big picture view. You don't need to put specific details in here. Now I can show you an AASHTO resource record, and I will tell you that I've been with AASHTO Resource, formerly AMRL, for 30 years, and I've been the quality manager for about 14 of those years. And I counted the other day how many management reviews I've been involved in, and the number kind of surprised me. It was 45. I've actually been part of 45 management reviews here. Because we do more than one of them a year, we actually currently do 5 management reviews per year by program. We do one separate for the AASHTO accreditation program, one for the assessment program, one for the proficiency sample program. We do a management review of the safety program that we have. And then in January of each year, I do a recap of all of those. So we have everyone in the room when we talk about all of the different individual management reviews that we had, and then they're learning everything that happened at each of those management reviews. But I'm always focused on continual improvement with these. We have greatly expanded the agenda for these over the years, and we're still learning. Each time we do one, we're incorporating something different to improve them. But here's a snippet of the notes that I took at last month's AAP management review. Here is when we were talking about customer feedback results. And we reviewed customer feedback, and you'll see here we talked about the goals that we have related to customer feedback and whether or not we met them. And then the big picture I went through prior to the meeting and gathered all of the comments that we received about why our customers like the program and also why they don't like the program. I left the don't like part out of here on purpose. But I love taking notes. These are pretty detailed notes, and I believe we ended up having 10 pages of notes for this particular management review. So why am I doing this? Is it really worth doing it? Yes, you have to do this for accreditation purposes for AASHTO, but it's really a very useful exercise if you do it effectively. And I wanted to go through just some benefits of performing management reviews. The big one is you're going to focus solely on the quality management system. This is the time where you set some time aside once a year to focus just on that without all of that outside noise of everything else that's going on in your organization. At AASHTO Resource, I schedule these typically for 4 hours. I know you're probably cringing at that. It does normally take us about 4 hours to get through everything. Our agenda is a lot longer than the items that I went through in this presentation. We do it in 2-hour chunks typically. And yes, we are all brain dead at the end of the 4 hours, but I will tell you, and I'm being completely honest, every single one of us at the end of every one of these that we do, we say, we should do this more often. We need to focus solely on this program and the quality management system and how it's serving this program more often. So we reap the benefits for sure. Improved communication is another benefit. When you get all your managers together, you're opening the lines of communication between top management, managers of different departments within your organization, the quality manager. We're learning from each other constantly, which is great. For us, it's led to improved consistency in our work. We're learning best practices from each other, making sure everyone's on the same page, incorporating different things that we've learned from each other to make sure that we're doing things in a consistent manner. And of course, the old continual improvement. We identify improvement opportunities. We make sure that we implement them because each time we do a management review, we want to see improvement in the effectiveness of our QMS. So let me circle back to the difference between internal audit and management review, because we do get this question pretty frequently from customers. Many of our customers think it's the same thing, and it's not. It should not be the same type of a record either. Internal audit is an audit of implementation, again, focusing on the nitty-gritty details. Did you dot your I's, cross your T's? Can be performed by anyone within the organization. Specific, focus on improvement, and then the results of your audit are inputs to management review. With management review, we're focusing more on the effectiveness of your QMS. Are you actually meeting your organization's goals? Management reviews must be performed by top management. We went over that. It's more of a big picture look, an overarching look of the whole organization and focus on improvement. I'd like to recap our learning objectives now. By now, you should be able to recognize the differences between management reviews and internal audits. I just went over that again. Hopefully, you've discovered some new strategies that you can use to effectively implement these reviews in your organization to achieve your goals. And I went over the 3 primary outputs of a successful management review. Again, decisions and actions related to the effectiveness of your QMS, resource needs that you might have, and those improvement opportunities. All right, before we get into Q&A, I wanted to let you know that we just released a podcast on management reviews on Tuesday of this week. So coincidentally, this happened the same week. This is where Steve Lanker, who is the director of CCRL and AASHTO Resource, Bob Lutz, who is the manager of AASHTO Resource, Brian Johnson, the manager of the accreditation program, and we sat down and shared our experiences from the management review we had of the AASHTO accreditation program last month. And we actually had a lot of fun recording that. But Steve and Bob are our top management, and it's very important that they're there during these management reviews. So take a listen to that, especially if you're struggling with getting your own top management involved in these management reviews and getting them to understand the benefits. Have them take a listen to it and see what they're missing. This podcast is, I think, the 10th one we have in a series of podcasts. And if you go to that website, you'll see other topics that we've done podcasts for recently. Accreditation, assessments, including remote assessments, and proficiency sample testing. And there's even one there from CCRL, interviewing somebody from CCRL. All right. So this leads us to some questions.
Thank you for the plug there for the podcast. I definitely appreciate that. As a producer, I know Brian does as well. So we do the podcast, and we do have a lot of stuff about that. And so check it out for sure. Before we get into some of the questions, I just wanted we had some comments and questions about getting a copy of the presentation and the recording. We will not be able to give out a copy of the presentation, but again, this is recorded and it will be on our website, and it will be emailed to you directly as an attendee. So you don't have to worry about taking copious notes or anything like that, because we are sending a copy of the recording to you. So don't worry there. All right. Now, feel free to type in more questions as they come, but the first one we have for you, Tracy, is from Matthew. Regarding proficiency samples. As a top manager, I often see for the same test on duplicate samples, one perfect score and one with low ratings, yet tests are done the same way. The lab is not able to find the issue and state a corrective action. Have you seen this within your organization? How do you advise top management in this point? And there's a follow-up he sent later. The lab has rerun the low rating samples and still got the same results before. So how would you handle that?
That's a tricky situation for sure. We definitely have seen that with our customers. We don't perform proficiency testing ourselves as far as our data being included in the final analysis. But that can happen. I'm wondering if it's something that happens a lot or not. Are you using the same equipment for each test? Is the same person conducting the test? Those are things you want to look into, of course, checking and making sure that your equipment has been calibrated or standardized or checked. I would find it really unusual if you're always getting great ratings on one sample and then low ratings on the other. So not sure what else I can offer as far as help is concerned. You might want to reach out to John Molesky of the Proficiency Sample Program if you're seeing a trend there. He might be able to enlighten you a little bit more on that.
Go ahead,
Is it okay if I jump in on that one?
Yeah, please do.
So I would add one thing, like Tracy was saying, that you really want to look for those trends. If you see this happen once, maybe it's not cause for concern, especially if you've rerun it on the one. But if you see it on the next round too, or you look at the previous rounds, we actually have a tool where you can see the ratings over time just by clicking on a button. And if you look at that graph, that'll give you an idea of how far apart those results are normally. But if you see the results normally kind of far apart on the two samples, that may indicate a repeatability problem, which would be more of a procedural issue for the demonstration of that test.
Yeah, and you're referring to the performance charts, right, Brian? When they click on those.
Exactly.
And they'll show you the past 10 years of data that your laboratory has. Yeah, thanks for jumping in on that. Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. So Tim wants to know, where is the best place to find training to conduct internal audits?
I've taken external training for internal audits. I don't want to name the actual agency because we don't want to endorse any specific agency. I took, I believe it was ISO related training 9001, and it was an intense 5-day course on internal audits. I thought it was fantastic. It was a number of years ago that I took it. But there are a lot of resources out there for internal audit training. I would direct you to ASHTO.org, the American Society for Quality. They offer a lot of training, and I know they're doing a lot of webinars right now because of COVID. So maybe check there.
Thanks, Tracy. And we also say, for on that topic, we also have an article that I linked to about internal audits, about the facts of that. So if you look in the chat, there's a link for that too, if you want more information on internal audits that we've provided.
Great.
And all right, next question. Sam wants to know, in general, is a written reply/follow-up required following a management review addressing any items or concerns identified in the management review, similar to an internal audit finding?
It's not required, but that is excellent practice. I'll tell you how we handle that. We call those things action items, and I highlight them on our notes in bold and red font. And I transfer those items into an Excel spreadsheet that I call the action items spreadsheet. We have monthly management and quality meetings. And if time permits, we actually go to the action items spreadsheet at each of those meetings. And we go through them and give a status update on each of those items so they don't fall through the cracks. Because otherwise, if you're not tracking it, it likely will fall through the cracks. And that's happened with us in the past. That definitely helps us stay on track with those. But it's not required by AASHTO R18 unless there is something that is non-conforming. Then, of course, you would want to issue a corrective action report, like if you weren't meeting a goal that you have stated in your QMS.
Thank you. Gerald wants to know how closely does AASHTO follow ISO 9001-2015?
Very closely. We have been certified to ISO 9001 since 2006. It happened right before I became quality manager here. And we are audited yearly for conformance to ISO 9001. Our quality management system is actually based on the requirements in ISO 9001 because we're not a testing laboratory, so AASHTO R18 would not apply to us. But yes, every year we're audited and we're making sure that we're meeting those requirements.
All right. Next question. Ryan wants to know, you indicated that management reviews completed remotely and via email will not be as effective as getting together as a group. So then why are we being forced to complete on-site assessments remotely?
Well, we're doing remote assessments because of COVID-19, and we're actually doing our management reviews right now and our internal audits remotely. We're doing the same exact thing that we're asking our customers to do. We have not been in the office since March, and in order to stay on top of these things, we are doing them remotely, and we've actually found them to be quite effective. We just had that management review a few weeks ago for the AASHTO accreditation program, and it was just about like being there in person. And Brian, I don't know if you want to chime in on that, but I thought it was very effective.
I thought so too. And I mean, you saw a little snippet of the report there. We had a lot of good conversations, just like we would in person. Of course, a management review lends itself a lot better than an assessment or something where there's physical demonstration lends
Yes.
itself to a remote activity. But yeah, I thought we didn't lose anything with that. We still had good discussions, and tools like Zoom and Teams and FaceTime really help us stay together even when we're far apart.
Absolutely. And we're on camera during those, so it's almost like being in a room physically with someone.
Yeah, and that's a little different than just sending an email, as you mentioned earlier in your presentation, Tracy.
Yes.
That it's a little different thing, but good question. Our next question is, how high of management is reasonable to accept? I'm in a large company, and most of our management is significantly removed from the day-to-day.
Well, if they're significantly removed, you may not need to include them, but if they're making decisions about your budget or whether or not people can go to training or you need their approval to change a policy, I would try pretty hard to get them there to be involved in the discussion. But we understand that. I mean, obviously, we have people higher up the chain than Steve Lanker and Bob Lutz. We don't get AASHTO headquarters involved in our management review. So we keep it contained within our organization in Frederick, Maryland. But it does depend on the organization, and that's a decision that you would have to make yourselves. But definitely want to get those decision makers in there.
All right. Next question is, Brian wants to know, we also experienced a high rating sample and then the second one low. We were advised through email to just perform and document a corrective action and keep it on hand. Do you recommend ordering 2 or more samples to confirm our changes worked?
Well, that's a little bit outside of the management review topic today. You're welcome to order the extra proficiency samples if you feel that you need to confirm the competency of that. If you do get low ratings 2 times in a row, you'll probably have to order proficiency samples or wait until the next testing round if your accreditation is affected, if you have a suspension resulting from consecutive low ratings. That is something that you would have to do. So it's up to you. You're welcome to purchase those extra samples. Many laboratories do for that very reason. That's up to you. There's no requirement to do that, though.
Just trying to throw you a curveball. All right, next question's from Jeremy. Being AASHTO accredited, how can I explain to my upper management who are retired Texas DOT and are not familiar with AASHTO accreditations, the benefit of having AASHTO accreditation and paying for the audits and proficiency samples?
Okay, Brian, would you like to answer that since you're the manager of the AASHTO accreditation program?
Well, first, I think you should have a sit down with them and say, hey, you were a Texas DOT employee. Why are you not advocating for AASHTO accreditation here? It's a great way for top management to know, and for your customers to know, that you are adhering to quality management requirements set forth in R18 and policies in the AASHTO accreditation program, as well as in conformance with the standard test methods that you're using. So there are a lot of benefits to being accredited. It also gets you work. Right. Hopefully TxDOT is requiring that now, and that can help you. But I know the Army Corps of Engineers, the FAA, certain local counties, cities require AASHTO accreditation. So it can bring a lot of business to you. There's some prestige with it. And it's as a employee of a company that is AASHTO accredited, you also have some assurances of a commitment to quality, which should help you and everybody else there be able to do your best work.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Thank you. And we have time for a few more right now. Trying to get through, see if there's a good one.
They're all good questions.
They are all good. I'm sorry. There's some people just saying thank you and things like that. So I'm trying to filter out.
Thank you.
Our next one's from Tony. Would review of new method let me read that again. Sorry. Would review of new method implementation look different in a management review compared to older laboratory practices? So a new method of implementation versus some old practices. How would those look different?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you read it to me one more
I will
time?
read it and not fumble.
Okay.
Would review of new method implementation look
Does that mean new test method implementation?
I feel like
Or
maybe
new policy.
policy implementation
Okay.
look different in a management review to compare to older laboratory capabilities. So if you just got added a new scope is how I'm interpreting this. If you just added some new tests to your testing to your testing capabilities, does that review of that look different than things that you've been doing for years? Is how I'm interpreting that, Tony. If I'm wrong, type in.
I don't think it should be different. It should be similar to what you've been doing all along. It's definitely important if you are adding a test or a scope to your testing activities to incorporate all of those as you would what you've been doing all along. So I don't think it would look any different. You might want to actually spend a little bit more time on the new stuff than you would have on things that you've been talking about for years because it is something new to your scope. But I would treat it in the same manner and perhaps just provide a little bit more emphasis on it.
Brian, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I would just add that changes are a good test to the robustness of your quality management system. So if you're adding a new scope, that's a good time to look at your training procedures and staff understanding of what that change is going to be. Any other ancillary changes that have to take place with administrative or fees or anything else,
Right.
storage. There's all kinds of things that can happen there. Promotion of that, staffing, all kinds of issues can come up when you have changes. So it's good to look at that, what you've added and what you've subtracted during those management reviews, whether you need to consider other avenues as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do that at our management reviews. If we're getting set to add a new scope to our services, we do circle back to all the things that Brian just mentioned to make sure that we're covering all of our bases.
All right, we have time for one more question right now before we wrap up. And as a sneak peek, we will be extending this a little bit longer than 3 o'clock Eastern time to answer some of the questions we didn't get to. But for the last one for now, for those who have to leave at the top of the hour, Kevin wants to know when the next R18 revision is expected to be published. I'm thinking that's a question for Brian.
That would be Brian for sure.
Yeah, there is an R18 ballot in the preparation stages. Has to go through, just to let you know, it's an AASHTO standard, so it goes through the AASHTO Committee on Materials and Pavements. It is a two-step process generally. It has to go through a subcommittee and then committee ballot. So once it is submitted, which should be relatively soon, then can anticipate about a year and a half before it's actually published. And then we would, of course, communicate those changes to people. If you go to our website, you'll see the changes to the last R18 are up there. And with it, we probably will be having some changes to the AASHTO accreditation procedures manual. In the meantime, we've had a lot of policy and guidance documents we posted on the website to keep people informed and improve transparency of the accreditation program. So check that stuff out. And if you have any input that you'd like to put into R18, just because it's voted on and approved by the DOTs doesn't mean that private industry is excluded from the exercise. So anytime you have suggestions for improvement, you can send them to us, info@ashtoresource.org. You could send them to me. Actually, you could send them to any of us and it'll get to the right place.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that, Brian. And it is coming up on the top of the hour. So we're going to put a pause on the question and answer right now, but we will be getting back to that. And I want to thank Tracy again for giving this presentation. If you have more questions about management reviews and you have to go, feel free to reach out to Tracy directly. Again, we're going to stay a little bit longer and answer some more questions, and it will be part of the recording, so don't worry about that. They'll be included. Now, before we continue on to more questions, I want to thank everyone for attending. If you're looking for other ways to connect to AASHTO Resource, you can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and again, a podcast is AASHTO Resource Q&A. You can find that on all podcast services. And if you haven't already, we would encourage you to register for any of our upcoming webinars in the series. You can find more information on our events page on our website. And lastly, when you leave this webinar, you're going to be prompted with a survey, a short survey. So please submit your feedback on today's session. We are always looking for continual improvement opportunities, and we would love your feedback from today's session. So thank you for those who had to pop out, which I think Brian is one of those. So thank you. Thank you for that. And yeah, so, and we will be going into our question and answer, our extended question and answers.
And I'll stop sharing my screen now so we can stop looking at that.
So you don't have
there
to
we go.
So you can keep still answering your questions and are asking questions, and we're going to go through them as much as we can. Okay? Nice.
Sounds good.
I'm just trying to find the one where I left off.
It's okay. Gives me a chance to get some water.
All right. And our next question, I don't know if it's in the realm of management review or not, but I have faith in you, Tracy, that you can answer it or give some guidance. Or give someone who wants to know the frequency of participation in Proficiency PT programs. Is it every year, every 2 years? What about the policy issue of that issue? Or what about the policy of that issue?
The participation requirement is every year for most samples. There are a couple of samples that are currently shipped twice a year. CCRL has a couple of those as well, like concrete. With us, it's PGB, performance graded binder, and other liquid asphalt samples. But in order to be an accredited laboratory, yes, you do have to participate in the PT testing every year in order to maintain your accreditation. It's only an accreditation requirement.
Thank you for that. And Michael wants to know, so said you mentioned software that helps you maintain your QMS. And he wants to know, can you tell us what software you use?
I can't. I'm sorry. We're prohibited from doing that because we don't want to look like we're endorsing any particular agency. I have done some exploration of all of them, and most of the big companies do offer similar services. So you might want to reach out to other agencies that maybe are using those. They typically would put on their websites names of companies that are using their software, and you could just reach out to those companies and see how their experiences are with it.
And from my understanding, there's a lot on the market. So
yes, and it's not cheap. I will tell you that it is not cheap.
All right. A next question is, can you give us any guidance on where people can find proficiency sorry. It's one of those days. I'm sorry, folks. Where they can find proficiency testing participation for calibration labs. Do you have any guidance on any of that, or?
I don't have anything on that because we don't offer accreditation to calibration laboratories. You may want to reach out to A2LA, which is just right up the street from us. They offer accreditation of calibration agencies, and they may be able to direct you to a place for that.
Yes, and I know we also have a video on our website about selecting
calibration agencies.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I had a little brain fart there, so thank you for following up there. Kyle wants to know, in our management reviews, our laboratory struggles finding customer complaints. We are a producer, and our customers are our internal terminals. Right. We know our laboratory isn't perfect. However, is there a way we can initiate or encourage our terminals to initiate customer complaints through the season? We've tried small surveys, however, and that didn't seem to help.
Well, I will tell you that we use, and Kim is very familiar, we use, can't name it, I suppose, right? Can we name it?
I don't know if we can name it.
I don't know.
An employee engagement and survey.
Survey, yes. And if you search for that on the web, you'll find it probably. But we do a survey once every couple of weeks of our employees. And you're saying that your customers are your employees. Well, we're concerned about what our employees are saying as well. So you can put any kind of a question on there at any frequency, I guess, right, Kim?
Mhm.
And people can respond anonymously, which is great about that. So you don't know who it came from at all, and people feel really free to offer suggestions, or, we're not encouraging people to complain necessarily, but we want to get feedback from our employees and our staff to see what it is that we can do to improve what we're doing. And we've been using that for years now, haven't we?
Yeah, since 2014, I believe.
And it's very easy to use. You just get it in your email and just click on it and answer the question. It takes like 15 seconds to do the whole thing. So you might want to explore something like that.
And I personally would recommend, if you make it anonymous, you're going to get more honest feedback from that. So perhaps that surveys in the past maybe weren't anonymous, so people didn't really want to complain. As a follow-up to that question, he also wants to know, if we see other facilities with no customer complaints, like, is that a common thing or what?
It is common. We hear that all the time. We never get complaints, but then when we're doing our assessments and we get into talking to people, they'll say, oh, our customers are always complaining about our technicians showing up late in the field, or we're not getting the test to them in a timely manner. You have to determine, is that a complaint? It sounds to me like it's a complaint. So maybe you need to dig a little bit deeper into what it is that you're identifying as a complaint. We certainly get complaints from our customers, not a lot, but we do. But I've been to agencies that have been in business for 50 years, and they tell me they've never received a complaint from a customer, and I'm astonished by that. That's all I'm saying.
I hope that answers your question, Kyle. And if we're not answering these questions, again, you can reach out to Tracy directly or submit another question, and we'll be happy to clarify if I'm misinterpreting or this.
Absolutely.
And this is not necessarily related. Evan has a question not necessarily related to management reviews, but I'm going to ask it and answer it myself because I know.
Okay, great.
So you can take a sip of water. Evan wants to know, is there abilities to use other platforms for assessments other than Zoom, as some government agencies do not allow Zoom? The answer is yes. We do make other arrangements for that. So when you're scheduling your assessment, you can talk with your assessor, and it does not have to be with Zoom. It can be through Teams or any other different ones. We prefer Zoom, but it doesn't have to be the only one. So you can work with your assessor when scheduling and working out those details.
Yeah, I'm glad someone asked that. That is something that's an issue.
Mm-hmm. All right. Gary says, you mentioned being ISO 9001 compliant. Is that something you find common in the laboratories you audit as well?
No, very uncommon. I've only been to a few laboratories that have it, and it's mainly they have that because they do work internationally, because that standard is recognized internationally more so than AASHTO R18 is. But I will say it was a lot of work to get the certification, and it's a lot of work to maintain it, but we love it. It keeps us on our toes. It makes us do things at regular intervals, and we have those yearly audits, and there are always findings, or not always, but almost always, there are some sort of finding and improvement opportunities identified, and we love it. We welcome the feedback from our auditors, and it's really made us a better organization for sure.
I would agree with that as well. Our next question is there a difference between quality meetings and management reviews?
Oh, and management reviews. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Well, that depends. A quality meeting, if you're covering all of the topics, all of those inputs that I discussed that R18 requires, if you're covering all of those at your quality meetings, that may suffice as a management review. So you'll have to take a look at your agenda and make sure that you actually are covering those things. We have monthly quality meetings, and we might only talk about one or two of the things that are on the list that we have to do for our management reviews. So we don't consider those official management reviews. We do that exercise separately. So it does depend, but maybe not. It depends on your organization.
And then a follow-up question just for myself. You'd have to maybe document and record those a little bit differently then.
Yes, and that's a good point too, Kim. Yeah, you definitely want to make sure that there's a record of that. A lot of times I know laboratories have management meetings or quality meetings, but they don't record any of the notes from the meeting. So if you don't have any evidence that actually took place, that would not be acceptable for AASHTO R18.
Thank you. Patricia has a question. She says, our upper management was out of the country and we had to get the management review done to comply with our QA system. He designated a substitute, which is in our QA manual and as acceptable, but the person reviewing our OSA refused to accept the substitution.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know the exact details involved there. I don't know if the person that you substituted is technically part of upper management, top management. If that's the case, and if it's something that's still going on, that maybe you just had an assessment and it wasn't accepted, maybe you can reach out to me separately and I can dig into that a little bit for you to see what's going on, or maybe it's already on the report. But I'd like to look into that, especially I was glad to hear that you document that in your QMS that you can substitute someone in that case. Obviously, the person was out of the country. So because I don't know all of the background details, I'd like to know more. So if you want to reach out to me at tbarnhart@ashtoresource.org, I'd be happy to look into that for you.
All right. Our next question is from Anonymous, and Anonymous wants to know if train is internally, but there are no certifications yet with a technician, can they still perform during assessments?
Yes. Well, yes. For regular assessments, if we're not talking about the ASTM quality management systems like C1077 and E329, if you're just talking about regular AASHTO accreditation, your technicians do not have to be certified. But if your laboratory is accredited or seeking accreditation for those extra standards that require technician certification, then yes, they would have to be certified or be in the process of being certified. And that would be a nonconformity depending on the standard. And the requirements vary between all of those: C1077, D3666, D3740, E329, and even some of the ones that CCRL looks at as well. So you have to make sure you're looking at those requirements.
And I would add is that our November webinar is going to be about technician certification. And so that would be a great one to attend as well. And we do have some documents on our website, some policy and guidance documents about that might be helpful in this situation as well.
Absolutely. And definitely reach out to your quality analysts if you're not sure. Our quality analysts are experts on the requirements for technician certification. So if you're not sure, the name of your quality analyst is listed on the website if you go into your own listing, and they'll be happy to help you with those questions.
Exactly. Let me see, trying to find.
I love all the questions.
I know. I'm liking this post.
Yeah.
This post one. And we still have a good number of people on sticking with us.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
I know. So we have a follow-up question. Does AASHTO resource get external audits as well?
We sure do. We have the ISO 9001 audits once a year. And then we received ISO IEC 17043 accreditation by A2LA just 3 years ago now, 3 years ago. And they audit us yearly. We're actually going to have our audit by them next month. And that is for our proficiency testing program. And that was also a lot of work to get that accreditation. And we are so happy that we did it. Now we are very happy that we did it. There's a lot of work leading up to it. So yes, we are probably audited maybe more than many of you are, if you can believe that.
We do like an audit, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We really do, Kim. You know it's true.
We do.
When I do internal audits, I'm sure the audience is thinking, no way, but we get excited about them. It's like, oh, Tracy's doing an audit. We can't wait. People will say that. I can't wait to see what we can improve. Mm-hmm. And that's how we feel when we get external audits. I mean, it's definitely stressful at times being under the gun during those audits, but we reap the benefits. We love it. We want to always improve, and we live and breathe quality. So bring it on.
Exactly. Let's see some other questions that we have here. Joan wants to know how many participants we had in today's session.
I don't know.
And I do know this question. And we had a couple hundred people on today.
Nice.
So that's the general vague answer, a couple hundred.
Great.
let's see, another question from Matthew. What quality system do you implement that ensure that all samples are the same samples? I'm thinking this is for proficiency samples.
Yes.
Follow up for that.
Yeah. We take great pains to ensure consistency with those samples. And that accreditation I was just talking about, the 17043 accreditation, that has a boatload of requirements regarding consistency of samples. We have to do homogeneity testing for all of the samples before they go out the door to make sure that they're consistent. We do multiple blends on material. It's not like we just go out with a pickup truck and grab a truckload of dirt and start scooping out of it. We do have some videos, or we used to, on our website, Kim, right? That people can actually see the production and process, or if you follow us on Twitter, you can see some of those processes. But the homogeneity testing, we actually hired somebody specifically to do that testing because it's so intense and it happens all of the time. And we also are required to do stability testing on those extra proficiency samples that we keep in storage that we were talking about earlier when a customer might want to retest some samples. We have to ensure that those samples are shelf stable and before we send them out to customers. And then if we ship anything internationally, as far as paint or liquid asphalts or emulsified asphalts, we put a freeze indicator in the box and then ask those customers to let us know if the freeze indicator burst or not due to extreme temperature changes during the airplane flight. So yeah, there's quite a lot that we do. I think you'd be pretty impressed with how we're doing that.
Yes. Sounds like Matthew may want to go attend next month's webinar about proficiency sample reports.
Definitely, yes.
And John will be there to answer all your questions. If you really want to know more about our proficiency sample program, John Molesky loves talking about this stuff and would be happy to have a conversation with you about it. Be warned, once he starts, though, he's not.
Oh, yeah.
He's so just be warned with that.
And we do have some newsletter articles about proficiency samples. One I'm thinking of that I wrote, it was about all of the myths surrounding proficiency samples. I wrote it a few years ago. Are your materials from Mars? All that kind of stuff. I think it's a pretty good article. It has a lot of good information. So I direct you to the Re-University page of our website and check that article out. And all of the articles, we have quite a lot of information there that maybe you're not even aware of. So happy reading.
Yes. And that actually brings me to another question that I saw. I've been in the chat. I had put some articles into some links to articles. Awesome. And Mackenzie wanted to know if we had anything for management reviews. And we currently don't have any articles for management reviews.
We don't. We don't, but we are about ready to publish a policy and guidance document on management reviews and internal audits. So look for that. Hopefully we'll get that done within a month or so. It's in the final editing processes. It's something that I wrote and Brian reviewed it for me, and we just want to run it by a few other staff members before we publish it. And speaking of policy and guidance documents, those are also on our website in Re-University, and we'll add this one at that time, and then you'll be able to have a concise document that talks about internal audits and management reviews. And of course, this recorded webinar.
Yes. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff on our Re-University page, and I will actually send a link right now into the chat, but it is just ashtoresource.org/university. But if you want to go there and have a lot of different information there for people. Trying to read a question so I don't stumble over it. Okay. Brian wants to know, our last management review only involved my manager and I, mainly because we make the most decisions involving our labs. Do you recommend involving anyone else, like one of our lab techs?
Well, that depends. You sometimes get into sensitive issues during a management review, and that's why we don't invite anyone outside of the management level to our management reviews, especially when you're talking about staffing, because we might get into, hey, we're thinking about creating a new position, something that you want to keep confidential to just the management group. You may be talking about performance issues with certain staff, and that's why you're getting so many complaints about a particular individual. I'd be a little bit leery about doing that for those reasons, just to protect the confidentiality of some of the information that you might be discussing. It's up to you, though. We wouldn't do that, though. And I don't share the notes from our management reviews with the entire staff. I only share them with the management group. But when I do internal audits, I do share the results of those with the entire staff. And if I am talking about specific employees in the internal audit, I don't name them. I would just say several of the quality analysts indicated this or did that, instead of actually listing who they were in the actual report.
Thank you for that, Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
So Robert has a question, and I think I can answer it. And if I can't, then maybe Tracy can. Okay. But I only can answer this, I think, is because we did a podcast. I think.
Okay.
So that's the only reason I think I can answer it.
Yay
Otherwise,
for podcasts.
I'm not normally the person. But Brian wants to know how to obtain ACI certifications during COVID. It seems we are unable to locate one. So I think that I know we an episode of the podcast, we did not have someone from ACI, but we had somebody else from a certification body on, and they were talking about how they're making changes and pivoting during COVID to be able to do those things. So I would encourage to do a little more research on that and really look into it. But do you have any other guidance, Tracy, about how to get certifications?
I don't, beyond just reaching out to the organization directly and seeing what their plans are. I know that we've been very flexible and forgiving during COVID, at least the early parts of COVID, understanding that you simply could not get the certifications. And I think with some organizations, you still can't. And we understand that as long as there's a plan of action in your corrective action that you submit to us, and it's an acceptable plan of action, should be okay. But again, reach out to those organizations, reach out directly to your quality analysts and get advice from them as well.
And I would add as well, document when you're deviating from what you've said that you need to do and your internal requirements, document why that's not the case right now.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Kim. I mentioned this during the webinar. If you're not meeting your goals related to certification, you're not able to get them in a timely manner, you really should issue a corrective action report for that. We got behind on Proficiency sample production, obviously, because we went to full-time work from home for months at AASHTO Resource. I got behind on internal audits and management reviews. We got behind on doing assessments for a few months. So I'm going to issue a corrective action report to discuss why that is. And I'm going to keep it open until we're back on track, which we are just about back on track. So
hopefully that gives you some guidance there, Robert. Sorry, I'm just trying to read through some. I apologize. We have a question. Is this webinar recorded for future review? Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. And I'll be sending that link out probably next week. Probably won't get it tomorrow, unfortunately, but so next week you should be seeing that in your inbox.
Yeah, tomorrow's Friday already.
I know. Again, trying to skim through and see what the most important ones are, because I don't want to keep everybody on for too much longer, since we are at almost an hour and a half.
I love that you guys are asking all these questions. It's awesome.
I know
you care about quality, and that's why you're asking these things.
Kyle again wants to know.
Is this Kyle K?
It is.
Hi, Kyle K. I know who you are.
Kyle wants to know, do we anticipate more policies being published about guidance for purchasing reference equipment? As an example, is it a great document that we had for thermometers? So we have the thermometer policy and guidance document. Do you know of any in the works, Tracy, for any other reference equipment?
I don't, but I will make a note of that to see. I don't know if we have one on selecting a calibration agency. Do we have a policy and guidance document for that? I'm not sure.
I think we do. We have
a lot. Let me make a note of that, Kyle K, and I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, we have a lot of policies in our policy and guidance section of our document library, and I can't recall if we have one of those. But a quick search might be able to. We might have one on selecting a calibration agency.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we don't have one for reference equipment. So that's a great idea. Thanks for that improvement opportunity.
Always welcome. Wow. Someone says we're doing a great job, so thank you.
Thanks. Do you like my plant for ambiance?
All right. Jeremy wants to know, when performing calibrations and keeping records, do the records have to be handwritten or can they be typed up? We've had some people with ugly handwriting and hard to read, so we're constantly rewriting. I have ugly handwriting and I would prefer to type, but I'm curious about this answer, Tracy.
Yeah, either are acceptable. You want to be careful, though, if you make any changes when you're handwriting things, you don't want to scribble out original data. That's just good business practice. Maybe strike through, don't use whiteout so you can actually see what it is that you're scribbling out. But we accept both. It's up to you. I'd say it's probably half and half at this point. So whatever works for you will work for us.
Thank you for that. Sorry, trying to, again, skim through them.
Of course, take your time.
Yep, no problem. Dale wants to know, it's kind of outside of management reviews, but I think between us, we definitely can answer this question. Dale wants to know, so we used to provide, AASHTO Resource used to provide worksheets on various scopes, but we stopped because of proprietary reasons.
Right.
It would be helpful to share them for worksheets as an internal guide. What have we been telling people that they should do when we stopped, since we stopped? We stopped doing the worksheets.
Yeah, we stopped that practice quite some time ago for proprietary reasons. We don't want other competing agencies to use the work that we did for their own purposes. That's part of it. But we've also gone to electronic worksheets, and our worksheets now have guidance for the assessors in many, many areas, things that they should specifically be looking for, tips and tricks, that kind of stuff. And again, it's proprietary. It's meant only for the assessors and not for customers. So we do ask, customers can certainly create the worksheets just like we did. I've been here 30 years. I was an assessor when I first started at AASHTO Resource. So I created a lot of those worksheets myself, just typed them up in a Word document line by line of everything that's in the standard. So it is something that you can easily do yourself, but we are not going to be sharing those worksheets, unfortunately, ever in the future. Yeah. It's strictly for our own purposes.
Yeah, I think to add to what you were saying, Tracy, that right before we removed them. They were basically no longer really useful for laboratories anymore. They were too internal for us. Yeah, so that was a reason for that as well. But yeah, they are just basically line by line from the standard. So it should be. Go ahead.
And sorry, and I will interject because I have seen this when I do audits. You want to be careful if you're still using those. That's a document control issue, because if you're still using the worksheets that we had from years ago for training or guidelines, I would discontinue that practice, because the test methods may have changed since then, and that whatever you're using is not the most current version of the standard, most likely. So I would be careful about using those for any official purpose.
That's a good point too. And I think we still have a couple more questions, but I'm thinking that we kind of answered them. So I don't want to reduplicate them. So I think we're going to take an end. I think we're going to end right now. It's at the bottom of the hour. If I still don't know if I'm using that term correctly, but we're at the bottom of the hour now. So I want to thank
half of the hour.
Half of the hour. I guess in the clock, it's the bottom. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what that is. But so we're going to wrap up right now. And so I want to thank Tracy for staying on for extra time. And I want to thank everyone for staying with us and answering your questions, or asking your questions. And if we didn't answer any of them, feel free to email Tracy, or you can email our general email at info@ashtoresource.org. I will be sending out, again, the complete recording of this, the whole hour and a half, next week, so be on the lookout for that. And again, take a moment when you exit the webinar to complete the survey, the feedback survey, because we definitely want to know what we can do to improve and what other topics that you have, or if you have any other suggestions or like that, we would be happy to hear it, and we definitely welcome that. So thank you for spending some time with us today, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.